More than 300 million people worldwide suffer from anxiety, a condition that can impair a person's family, social, and school or working life. For years, mental health professionals have treated it with therapy and medications, but they don't cure it. Daniel Packard, a mechanical engineer by training, claims he has developed a system that can do just that.
I'm living proof. I was in my house in a fetal position and could not leave. And now I have been chill as a cucumber. And this energy level is not cocaine. It comes from a healthy nervous system and a lot of purpose.
He's here to talk about solving anxiety. I'm Steve Fisher, and this is Lifeslices. Let's start with our typical opening question. Who is Daniel Packard?
Well, there's what the paparazzi say, runway model, diplomat, spy, hero, Jesus figure. I don't say these, but people do. I would say I'm somebody who I believe my essence is to care and to serve and bring healing and joy to people's lives. That's what came to me.
What made you that way?
That's an excellent question. I think what has made me very effective at what I do is I don't have any one particular talent or skill that others don't have. I'm smart, but there's lots of smart people. Your audience is smart. I care about people, but a lot of people care. But I have a balance of, I grew up with a physicist father, and I have a very precise mechanical engineering mind that can problem solve like a mofo, but then this deep, empathetic, deeply caring heart. And usually those don't go in the same person. Einstein, brilliant man, horrible father and husband. So those two together allowed me to bring systems that help people heal.
You brought up the mechanical engineering. What drove you to study mechanical engineering?
Growing up with my dad was a physicist and an inventor, and he had a workshop, and he also loved sailboats. And he liked to get in, pull the boats apart and rebuild them better. And so he also, with our house, when something would break, he would pull it apart like a dishwasher and fix it. I'd also go to his lab. He was an experimental physicist. They have to develop their own experiments, their own apparati. So I would go to his lab and see all this elaborate things that he invented, and he had this workshop, and he'd just let me go in there and play around. And when I got into bikes at like 13, I looked at bikes and I could see that they weren't designed properly. And I went in and just started making my own bike parts at like 13, 14. And I loved that idea. He also told me, if something isn't working in the world, invent something better. And that always stuck with me. And it's why I help people with anxiety, is because I saw that the anxiety mental health was kind of not working. And instead of just sitting back, I said, I'm going to invent something better.
We're going to get into the anxiety in a minute. Don't be anxious about it. How does one go from mechanical engineering to stand-up comedy?
You have a deep passive aggressiveness towards your Jewish parents. No. I was a funny kid. It got me attention, and I figured out, okay, this maybe a woman will love me if I'm funny. And I started off in theater school, but I spent one summer in a warehouse in Illinois shoveling manure, and I went, if my parents are going to send me to college, I think I don't want to theater degree. I think I'm going to get a real degree just to maybe so I don't end up in a warehouse. I always liked designing and figuring things out. So I applied to mechanical engineering school at UC Berkeley. Didn't think I would get in. I got in, enjoyed it, but I had this love of performing. So while going to engineering school, I was also then hopping on my bike and pedaling my bike into black African-American comedy clubs in Oakland, California doing comedy. So it's kind of cool because I had these two lives and I just loved it. But I took my engineering analysis of breaking down systems to develop a style of comedy that hadn't been invented before, because it kind of got old just telling jokes and punchline jokes. I got bored and there were things I wanted to do on stage. So I really engineered a powerful form of comedy that took the audience on an improvised ride where there was still a structure, and I developed it for 10 years. And when it was finished, I took it to New York, and within 2 weeks, I had the producers of Book of Mormon and Wicked wanted to put the show on Broadway.
Was it on Broadway?
We worked for 2 years. Everything was a go, and it got time for them to write the $2 million check to rent the space. And a couple things just lined up. The whole thing collapsed over like a 48-hour period. And I was kind of glad because my heart wasn't in it. Deep down, I knew I wanted to teach and really help people. And you can't really help people in an hour when there's $100 ticket prices and you got to impress a New Jersey soccer mom. So I was kind of grateful that the whole thing collapsed because it allowed me to do this now. And I get to be funny and still help people.
We're going to fast forward to today, and you are an anxiety solution pioneer. Explain that title and how you got there.
I got there because a lot of times when teachers and healers help people with anxiety, low self-esteem, usually they have struggled in their life. They have some pain, they overcome it, and they teach it. That's not me, Steve. I was just born perfect. I was hatched from spores in Roswell. Oh, sorry, that's not me. So what happened was, while I was in New York working on the Broadway show, I fell in love with what I thought was the one, and she was the one, meaning she was fun and we got along and we fell in love and it was incredible. But the person you want to spend time with and the person that can take care of your heart are not always the same person. So we adored each other, but the relationship turned very toxic and I was too codependent, stayed in way too long. And when I came out of the relationship 2 weeks later, I had PTSD and crippling anxiety, couldn't leave the house. The tiniest thing would send my body just into a spiral of terror. And I spent 10 years going to therapists and psychologists and doctors and gurus. I was in a cult, spent $100,000. I still had the anxiety and PTSD. It was getting worse. And I sort of had this awakening of going, wait a minute, this industry is not getting results. And I remember what my dad said, like, results matter. I was in so much pain. And I knew that I had a gift at problem solving, and I was trained to solve complex problems in engineering school. So out of necessity and purpose, I started my own research company with the goal to reverse engineer a permanent solution for anxiety for myself, but also the whole world, because there's all these people in pain with anxiety, and almost everything is symptom management. It's all awareness and tips and tools to manage it. That's unacceptable. It's like trying to manage drowning. I wanted to see if it was possible. It was possible. It took us 8 years to figure out how to do it, the theory, but also the process and the testing and the optimizing. But now we have a program that solves anxiety at 90%. And as far as we know, it's the only one in the world that has a 90% success rate. And it's the only one in the world where we only charge people at the end once they get results. And the reason I mention that is because people say, come on, that's too good to be true. But we only charge if it works. And that's because my dad told me results matter. And if we can't help you, we don't take your money. We're here to help, not take your money.
And we're going to get into that a little deeper shortly. You have on your website a term called a nervous system reset. What's a nervous system reset?
It's the program that we developed. It's the 6-week program. When people first hear that, I like to clarify why it's called that. And it's called that because that's where anxiety is actually coming from. And the reason I bring that up is it explains why I couldn't solve my anxiety. And most of your listeners who have anxiety or know people with anxiety, when you can't solve it, you start to feel like it's your fault and like you're broken. What we discovered was the experts are telling us anxiety is a problem of the mind. Quiet your negative thoughts. Don't believe the scary thinking. There are pills to target the neurotransmitters in your brain. It's called mental health, Steve. So everyone's taught it's in the mind, but we looked at the results. We said, okay, is the anxiety in the mind theory getting results? And I said, modern psychology has been around about 100 years. They've had 100 years to figure this out. Physical health, almost every other metric is getting better. Infant mortality has gone down. Heart disease is going down. Certain types of cancers, polio's gone. Life expectancy is up 30% in the last 100 years. Anxiety has gotten 30% worse just in the last 10 years. And $1 trillion is spent a year on mental health, and it doesn't, the data showed it wasn't getting results. So based on results, we were like, maybe it's not in the mind. And the second we challenged that theory, which we could do because we weren't experts, we were outsiders. We were just engineers trying to figure this out. We saw it wasn't in the mind, it was in the body. So the first thing I want your listeners to know is your anxiety is not in your mind, it's in your body. A, that's where it's coming from. B, that's the reason you haven't been able to solve it because the experts sent you to the wrong location. So you do not have an anxiety problem, you have a location problem.
That's very interesting. And I'm assuming GPS won't solve that. That would be a great thing if Google Maps could just direct you.
Well, it would be, but I'm telling you right now, I'll be Google. I'll be whoever that voice. Just say, Daniel, where's my anxiety coming from? Go ahead, say it.
Daniel, where's my anxiety coming from?
It is under your nose.
That's very good.
It's in your body. That's where it's coming from. We know that because when we started to apply the tools that we developed to not the mind but the body, we already saw people's anxiety going down about 20 to 30% permanently. That's how we knew we were on the right track. The nervous system, we weren't sure where in the body it was. But the beauty of knowing it's in the body is because the body is very simple. The mind is complicated. They barely understand the mind. They don't know what's going on. So if you think it's in the mind, you're already confused. And that's why a lot of people are confused. They think it's a disorder in the mind. It's not. It's in the body. But the body is very simple because it is one of my favorite words, Steve. It's mechanical. The skeleton is mechanical. Your arteries are everything's mechanical. And all systems have certain similarities as to how they run. So once we saw it was in the body, we said, well, what system controls anxiety? And it's pretty obvious. Anxiety is just being super nervous, right?
Right.
So pop quiz to you, Steve, and anyone listening to this. What system in the body do you think controls anxiety? The circulatory system, the respiratory system, or, the nervous system?
I would guess the nervous system.
You're a brilliant man. How obvious is that? We're feeling extra nervous. And there's a system in the body called the nervous system, but the experts said, no, it's a mind disorder. Like, now, if they were getting results, fine. But they weren't. And they didn't clue in to the simple thing because they all get trained the same information. They're just regurgitating. But once we saw it was in the nervous system, it made so much more sense because then people ask, well, how do I fix it? Or why is my nervous system like this? But once you're in the body, things are so simple. Every system in the body has a certain core principle, which is that it has basic daily hygiene that it needs. Like, you need to sleep about 8 hours. You need to drink a certain amount of water. For your dental system, you need to brush and floss. For your diet, you need the food pyramid. Like, there's basic hygiene that most systems need. And if you do the basic daily care, most systems run pretty well. If you eat a decent diet, your poop comes out okay. Your system runs fine. So if you have a malfunctioning system, what's the first most obvious guess? That it's a complex disorder, or that maybe you just weren't taking care of the system and now you're seeing symptoms? What do you think?
What's the question again?
The question is, if you see a system in the body malfunctioning,
you look to that system.
Yeah, and what's the most obvious explanation for why it's malfunctioning? It's usually that it's not being taken care of.
Well, yes, but as a nice Jewish man, my initial thought is, it must be a tumor.
Maybe.
Well, that's not the answer I wanted. Maybe. That's worrying.
Now, tumors are the one thing that may happen that just happen. But other things in the body, if your arteries are getting clogged, it's not because of your chakras. It's not because you don't pray to the almighty wizard lord. It's just your diet was unhealthy and it accumulated and your arteries are clogged. If you're having trouble breathing, oftentimes it's because maybe you were smoking. If your poop is off, it's not complex. It's not because your father liked manure on the fertilizer. It's because your diet is off. So once we saw that, that is the root cause of anxiety. Basically, we were never taught. I was never taught. You were never taught. Your listeners were never taught. Nobody was ever sat down as a child and ever said, okay, here's what you need to do every day. Basic hygiene of your nervous system. This is what you want to do to your feelings and emotions every day. And if you don't do that, you're going to have problems. Did anybody ever tell you that, Steve?
No.
No. And when the people that were supposed to love you weren't able to always love you at the highest level, it trains us that maybe we don't deserve to be loved and taken care of. Or the people that hurt us and didn't apologize. We unconsciously start to think, well, maybe I shouldn't take care of myself. So we were never taught how, and we were actually conditioned not to take care of our nervous system. And so eventually, just like if you don't brush and floss, eventually you're going to have if you don't brush and floss, you'll have a fragile, painful mouth. And if you don't take care of your nervous system, you'll have a fragile, painful emotional system. And that's it. So if you have anxiety, it's not your fault. You are not broken. There is nothing wrong with you. You were just never taught how to take care of a system in your body. And now that system is fragile. And when you push on it, you feel pain. But it's actually, you're not broken. Your system is actually running exactly the way it was designed. If you don't brush and floss and you need a root canal, your teeth aren't broken. They're giving you feedback that you're not taking care of them. So your nervous system, your body isn't broken. It's actually sending you alarms that it needs to be taken better care of.
I've got to go make friends with my nervous system. I've taken it for granted for too long.
Yeah, it's not on people's radar. We are taught to take care of our finances, our body, other people, a house, our car. More people do better maintenance on their pet and their car than they do on their own nervous system. And then we wonder why people are struggling emotionally.
Do you get a lot of feedback from mental health professionals who either take you to task for not being a trained psychiatrist or psychologist, or who are amazed that you came up with this and go, wow, why didn't I think of that?
No, they don't embrace what we do, which surprised and saddened me. When we came up with this and we started getting these results, some people, not in the mental health industry, were very interested in our work. We started working with the South African government to create a national response to addiction and mental health. Because they saw me working we were in South Africa, in Johannesburg for 2 years, and they saw the results we were getting. And And I said, my God, this is incredible. But the mental health industry, I go to conferences, I tell people about that. They are not interested, and it breaks my heart. I'm like, you want to help people. I know you're not solving it. You can learn this. We'll teach you. And I asked the therapist, he said, Daniel, what you're doing is very threatening to them. They're going to find out that almost everything they learned isn't what they thought. Mm-hmm. And they don't want to relearn. They just want to regurgitate stuff. And they don't want to find out that on some level they were wrong. Now, a scientist does want to find out they're wrong, but they don't. And then they said, also, Daniel, your program solves anxiety in 6 weeks. That's a horrible business model. It's much better to manage people's anxiety and teach them about it and spend years peeling back the layers of the onion. That's a cash cow. And so that's what my friend who was a therapist basically said is we'll find early adopters, and we are, but yet we're not being embraced, and people shoot me down all the time. And I just say, look, I get it. You have the piece of paper, but we have the results, and we back up our results. Do you back up your results? No.
Your team that put this together, how large a team was this?
5.
5 people. Who are these people? Are they other mechanical engineers? Are they from different walks of life?
They were primarily there to help support me in the research. I was coming up with the theory and then the experiments because we were working with test cases, trying out things. Also, I'm the one who had the anxiety and PTSD, so I was sort of perceptually thinking, okay, here's what I need. Then I would come up with a model and tools, and then we would go out and run the experiments. So we spent 5 years working with 3,000 people on 5 continents. So we had to set up the workshop. We had to gain access to certain groups. We worked with monks in India. We worked with nonviolent groups. And so it took a lot of to come up with this process took a lot of just boots on the ground work to get the people, because I didn't have a practice where clients were coming in. We had to go out into the field and find people to help.
How did you find these people? When you first approach somebody and tell them about your idea, did people look at you like you're crazy?
Well, we learned early on, don't go to the mental health people because they're not going to want to hear it. So we went to people who had a pain they couldn't solve. So we were working with nonprofits for 2 years in South Africa. And we went to them and he said, what's a emotional mental health problem you can't solve? We have a system that'll solve it. They said, well, addiction and mental health. And they said, we have systems to solve that. So I said, I'll come in for free and I'll show you what I do. And they saw me in real time working with their clients, and they saw their numbers dropping. So we had a couple people take a chance on us, and then once they saw the data spoke for itself.
How does your solution differ from what the mental health professionals are doing?
There's 2 key components, and this is also what I want your audience to know so they don't blame themselves for this. First of all, we're in the right location. It's not a problem of the mind. It's a nervous system issue. Secondly, it's not a disorder. It's your system is off balance because it wasn't taken care of, and it needs to basically be repaired. The other reason that people aren't solving anxiety, but we are, and I want your audience to know this, is almost everything that out there that is taught is a tip or a tool to manage the symptom. However, that's very different than a system with tools and a process and ingredients and a formula to repair a system. So metaphorically, let's say you have an engine and an engine needs regular oil changes, but you were never taught to do an oil change. So you didn't change the oil, and then one day your engine blows. And then you go around to all these experts and they're like, well, what your engine needs is motor oil. And what your engine needs is don't do this. It's like, okay, that was great before the engine blew. But once the engine blows, you can't do affirmations. You can't just pour motor oil on the engine. You have to understand how to take the engine apart, the steps in the sequence, and then bring it back together in a certain order and sequence. And so the special sauce is not just the theory. Theory is theory. My dad taught me theory. It's the process. It's the ingredients in just the right order that we tested and retested. And you need a full process. Just like if you're having chest pains, you can't just eat salad. It's too late. You can't just eat salad. I know, shocking. What do? You go to the doctor, and they have a process that they perfected over decades. They anesthetize you first. There's an order. They don't anesthetize you after they cut you open. Anesthesia first. They open you up in a very specific order. They go in, they open up the artery with a stint, they clear it out, then they get blood thinners, then they change your diet so that it doesn't come back. But all of that had to be developed and perfected, and that's what you need. You need a system that's designed to repair, not just tips and tools to manage it. So if you're out there, the reason you failed is because the people you trusted basically just told you to pour motor oil on a blown engine. You were never going to be able to fix it. You need a system and a process to bring your nervous system back to health.
And I just want to caution all our our listeners to not go and drink motor oil now, thinking you're going to fix yourself?
I appreciate that. We live in a litigious world, Steve. Yes, these are metaphors.
If you don't know what a metaphor is, please consult your dictionary. I want to take into account any possible person listening to this. When you talk about you have a 90% success rate, so there's 10% who it didn't work for. Do you know why it didn't work for those 10%? Are there certain factors with certain people that makes this a system that's not good for them?
So it's a good question, and people often ask it because who wants to do this and then fall into the 10%? The 10% is not about what type of anxiety you have, and it's another misnomer about anxiety. People think there's health anxieties, there's public speaking anxiety, money anxiety. There's not all different types of anxiety. Essentially, your nervous system is fragile. Just like if you don't brush and floss, your teeth are fragile. Now, once your teeth are fragile, if you eat a carrot, you're going to feel pain. If you eat ice cream, you're going to feel pain. If you eat a jawbreaker, you're going to feel pain. You don't have jawbreaker pain disorder or ice cream pain disorder or carrot pain disorder. You have a fragile system. Then when pushed upon, you feel fragility and pain. So there aren't all these different types of anxiety. You just have a fragile nervous system that might show up in your relationships or when you think about your health. So no matter what type of anxiety you have or what you think you have, the program will work. The 10% I would say we don't always know what the student is doing and how seriously they're taking it. We do track you as you go through it and make sure you're doing your exercises every day, but we don't know how deep you're going or how seriously you're taking. So I think 5% user error, and then 5% we're still developing it. What we're trying to do is undo decades of damage in like 6 weeks. It's an audacious goal, and ultimately different people have different timelines and come back to health faster. So if we had more time, meaning more than 6 weeks, I think we could get our side up to 95, but we're still working and developing and tweaking and optimizing. And that's why we have the money back guarantee, because 1 in 10 doesn't do it. If we can't help you, you don't pay.
Have you had any situations where somebody came and the first time around it did not work for them, but they decided to give it another go and then it was successful?
It's a good question. So metaphorically, think of it like a garden that hasn't been watered. And what you need to do is show up every day and water the garden. Like, that's going to work. That can't not work. So often what we'll do is people will go through it, not often, I would say about 5 to 10% of the time, people go through it and they'll admit, I didn't take this as seriously as I could. I had a lot going on, but I can clearly see this would work. I got some improvement in 6 weeks, 30 to 40%. And I know if I keep applying the tools, I'm going to keep getting better. Just like if I keep watering the garden, eventually the garden will come back to health.
If somebody comes to you with that excuse, is there still a fee for the service and they get a discount because it didn't work the first time around?
No, we want to uphold this. First of all, most people get through it, get results, and pay. So we can keep our lights on. We want to be in integrity. It's also our responsibility to develop a program that's doable and simple. If you do your part reasonably well, it's like 85% of the day. You do your exercises 85% of the time. There's 4 exercises a day for 5 minutes. If you do that 85% of the time and you show up consistently, if you don't get results, you don't pay a penny. Because we want to make it easy for people to try this, because we know people are skeptical and they're like, are you going to take my money? And we go, look, if you're not thrilled, if you're not happy, if your anxiety's not gone, you don't pay a penny. And that allows people to take a risk because they think it's too good to be true and get the help that they need, which is why we do this.
So how do they do it? Is it in-person workshops? Is it online?
It's all online, everything. We want to scale this so we can help millions. So in the beginning stages, we were doing the system sort of me one-to-one with people as we were figuring out the mechanics and understanding. But after about 2 years, I said, okay, we can systematize this. It was not easy, but basically there's 4 modules, and each module has 90 minutes of video where you learn the theory. Then there's about a half an hour video that explains to you the exercise that you're going to do 4 times a day. And then you do that exercise 4 times a day. And that's it.
When people say they actually got good results, how do you measure that? How do you measure whether somebody needs to pay the fee or not?
Excellent question. I'm an engineer. Results matter. When you start the program, you do a pretty thorough intake questionnaire where we're doing a lot of 1 to 10 questions on your anxiety intensity, duration, overthinking, a whole bunch of metrics. Then as you go through the program, you're measuring your anxiety in 3 key metrics every day. And so we're tracking you throughout the program. And so we know very clearly by the end, numerically, how much improvement you got. Not to mention, you just feel much better and you feel happier and your mind is quiet and you get to be you again.
So how do people learn learn more about your program, and how do they sign up?
The short answer is reach out to me to book a consultation to find out if you're a good fit and to learn more at danielpackard.com/call. But I want to make sure that the right people reach out to us because everyone says they want to be free of anxiety, but they're not always serious or they might be scared. And we're looking for people that really want to be free of this. So I just want to quickly recap what we went over to make sure that the people listening understand what we do. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
So again, just to be absolutely clear, and this is whether people work with us or not, I know how broken I used to feel and how I thought this was my fault. And if you're listening to this, you have anxiety, but it is not your fault. You are not broken. First of all, you were never taught how to take care of your nervous system. So eventually that system is going to fall into disrepair and it's going to be fragile. And when you push on it, it's going to feel pain. Nobody taught you how to do better. This was going to happen. If you don't brush and floss, you will end up with a root canal. If you don't take care of your nervous system, you will end up with anxiety. It was not your fault. And the reason that you still have anxiety is also it's not your fault because you trusted experts who told you to go to the wrong location, the mind, when it was in the body, the nervous system. You also still have it because you were taught it was a complex disorder that needs to be worked on for years and you never get there. No, it is simple. It is mechanical. You can bring systems back to health. So you do not have a disorder, complex disorder. You have a simple mechanical issue that can be brought back to health. You also still have it because you were just given tools to manage things. And that was never going to solve anything because the people that you trust make more money, I believe, from just symptom management. So you never could have solved it. That's the other reason. And then finally, you were never taught the actual steps in the right order. You weren't taught the how. That's the tricky part. How to do something, not the what. The what is easy. What? What's a relationship based in? Trust and communication. That's easy. How? How do you actually repair a relationship and with yourself? So that's why you still have it. Not your fault. You are not broken. The system is, which I know sounds like a punk rock lyric, but that's how I feel. So the downside is you have anxiety, you still have it, and you were never going to solve it because people sent you the wrong location and didn't give you a how. That's the bad news. The good news is, if you're paying attention, is it means this is actually simple and solvable. If you have tooth pain and someone told you it was about your foot, that's a problem. But if you find out one day, oh, I should focus on my mouth, and then you realize, oh, I just have to go to the dentist, bring my teeth back to health, and then brush and floss moving forward, a lifetime of tooth pain can go away in a couple weeks. The bad news is you didn't know this, so you've been suffering unnecessarily. The good news is this is just as simple and solvable as going to the dentist and learning to brush and floss. And the even better news is that we spent 8 years and $1 million of research and testing to develop the how. The step in just the right order, in just the right sequence, applied just correctly, that if you work the steps, you get the results in a short period of time. There's no guesswork, no wondering. It is our baby. It is our gift to the world. And we reset your nervous system in 6 weeks. That's why it's called nervous system reset. And if you're interested in this, and I say if, because if you're skeptical, that's good. You should be skeptical. But if you're cynical, don't reach out to us because there's nothing I can do to give you hope. If you want this to be complicated and spend endless money on symptom management, there are plenty of people that'll take your money. But if you're skeptical but open, most of our clients have a brave, open mind. If that's you and you want to find out more about nervous system reset, reach out, book a call with me. And on that call, you can ask questions, get more information. But also, I'm going to double, triple check that you're a good candidate for the program because we don't want you to do it and fail. A, we're here to make you feel better. If you fail, you're going to feel even more broken. So we don't work with you. Also, selfishly, we only get paid when it works. So I got to double, triple check it's a good fit, which it almost always is. And then also we talk about pricing. People always want to know. We talk about pricing. It's not what it's worth. It's worth $1 million when you get your life back. We don't charge $1 million. We could, but we don't. And what I tell people is we have different programs at different prices and we have payment plans. We can make this affordable for absolutely anybody. We do not want money getting in the way of your happiness. And we also don't want you spending money you don't have, which just creates more stress. We're trying to lower your stress. If on the call, it's a good fit and we sense that commitment, I promise you we will create a package and a payment plan that will work for you. There's no high pressure sale. If you don't want to do it, just say no. If you do want to do it, you can start to feel better within the week. If it does work, if it doesn't work, you don't pay. If it does work, you get your freaking life back. That is just really, really, really good math. So if you want to find out more and have that call with me, consultation, danielpackard.com/call. But again, only if you just want to manage your anxiety, if you want to keep drowning, don't call us. But if you truly are ready to leave this behind and be happier and be more joyful, show up for the people you care about, have more focus and joy, and you really truly believe you deserve it, please reach out to us. You're who we developed this program for. You reach out to us, you do your part, and we'll do our part to get you a happier life quickly.
Daniel, is there any question that you would like to answer that I haven't asked?
I mean, I appreciate the open generosity, and like you, I like to talk and ask questions, but no, I feel like that was to use a nasty vernacular, that was my money shot. Like, that is what I wanted to say and share, but just from my heart, it's not a question, but like, really, for me, this is life and death. I see people dying physically from suicide and spiritually from not having a life from this. That's who reaches out to us, and we save their lives. This is what saved my life. And so we're being jokey here, and we talk about metaphors, but like, honestly, this is serious. People are dying and they don't have to. So if you have anxiety or know somebody that does, it feels like you're stuck with this for the rest of your life because everything else failed you. But what if there is something better, and what if you don't have to live like this? I'm living proof. I was in my house in a fetal position and could not leave. And now I have been chill as a cucumber, and this energy level is not cocaine. It comes from a healthy nervous system and a lot of purpose. As Meg Ryan said, and Harry Met Sally, you see this joy and excitement and you're like, man, I'll have what he's having. If you want to find out the process that I did to go from fetal position to lethal position, sorry, that's not the best rhyme, please reach out to us.
Thank you so much, Daniel, for your time. I appreciate your being here.
I appreciate you, Steve, for having me, and I appreciate your listeners for going with me on this journey.
My thanks to Daniel Packard for sharing his discovery and his passion with Lifeslices. Everyone has experienced anxiety to some degree, but be thankful if you've been able to overcome it. For many, it is debilitating and severely undermines happiness. If that's you, go to danielpackard.com/call, C-A-L-L, and see if Daniel's nervous system reset can help you. With his no gain, no financial pain promise, you have nothing to lose, except possibly whatever it is that's holding you back.
If you liked this program, please like Lifeslices on social media and subscribe wherever you find podcasts. Lifeslices is produced by Beatnik Ravens Productions, all rights reserved. Music courtesy of Fesleyan Studios.